and we are live with Sharif El-Mekki. My brother El-Mekki, you are back, man, for another Freedom Friday. You were just back in general, so I'm happy to see you, bro. Welcome back.
Oh, thanks a lot, man. Thanks for all the support. Good to be back. Shout out to Dr. Kelly Seaton for, holding it down last week with you. And appreciate it.
Dr. Kelly was amazing, as we just discussed a minute ago. She's amazing. She's got a great way of framing an issue where she is firm and she is direct and she's not pulling any punches. And at the same time, she is humble and she is looking for understanding, and she's not looking to have a fight or whatever, which is amazing. She's got the skill. That must be like the educator skill that some of y'all bring to the table.
Yeah, you know what? I think when you're like, you feel grounded in the experience and you've been there, and we talk a lot about when she was a principal and I was a principal, we were in master charter together, and we just be plotting and planning for our people, figuring out like, oh, what can we do next, but also just being grounded in research. I think that's also just super important. It brings humility because it shows you how much you still don't know, but also you're very clear as far as what the North Star is.
And with her, like so many people, I'm just amazed at how blessed I am in the network. In my network, at times I will look up, I'll be talking to a person like this, and it'll hit me. You just said the word research. I'll be like, damn, you got a PhD. You've done some research. We're talking about research. We're talking about other people's research, but you yourself have done some research. And again, I love it when it's a person who that's not even the card they're trying to play on you ever. They're just a normal person, regular, trying to find understanding in the world and get our kids an education. She's amazing. So
yeah, man, she loves planting flowers and loves kitty cats and stuff. You know what I mean? Like just a normal person, but like just the brain of a genius.
I wonder where you with your gardening. Our friend, our friend Shantae Barnes, another educator, whatnot. She's got a gardening blog. I don't know if you know this. Yeah, I don't know if you know this. She's had a gardening blog for a while.
She's keeping secrets out there in Indy, huh?
Okay. Yeah, there's like this Afro gardening, botany thing that has taken root at some time that I just didn't pay attention to, because I'll look up and my people got full gardens. They're growing real food in their urban backyards and whatnot. It's nuts. So anyways, we got a spicy show today that I want to jump into.
Let's see.
And I think it's about time. I think it's important to have this show. But what I want to do is,
because you did this on 8 Black Hands maybe a year or so ago. They came up just as a topic, but not
as a topic. Show. But we didn't go all the way there. And I got questions. So friends, family, people watching this or whatnot, please share this with others right now if you can. You know how we say, look to your neighbor and say, neighbor. And then they give you something to say, like, put some money in the plate. No, they don't usually say that. But I'm just saying, they say, neighbor, do something. Well, look to your neighbor right now and say, neighbor, watch this show. You need to watch this morning. Today, we are talking about nigger and niggers and niggers and being niggered and niggerized and nigger-lipped and nigger-jacked and nigger-rigged. We are talking about the concept that is enduring and has been with us for a long time, that gets to be so spicy sometimes that we don't even say nigger. We try and clean it up, sanitize it, remove the power and the history from the concept, and say the N-word. I personally
I'm in that party.
You're in that party, and I personally said the N-word for a long time, like the N-word. I would say the N-word. And that was my version of Latinx or BIPOC. It was something that I don't know where I got it from. It just happened at some point. I started saying the N-word instead of saying nigger. Some of you who know me and have known me for a long time probably remember that I used to do a podcast called Rock the Schools. On that Rock the Schools podcast, I talked to Dick Gregory. It was one of my favorite interviews. Dick Gregory said some of the craziest stuff to me that proved out to be true in that conversation. I've told this story before, so if you've heard it, I'm sorry to bore you again, but I had Dick Gregory on the show civil rights icon, Dick Gregory, genius, master of so many things. And he had a lot to tell me about our food supply, about what we're eating, about how we're being poisoned, about the chemicals that are all around us, about the chemtrails that were shot over neighborhoods for years that we thought were just pretty designs in the sky with airplanes going by. Turns out that there was much more to them than that. The person who put me onto that was Prince. Actually was a fan of Dick Gregory's, and Prince was actually a fan of this theory around chemtrails or whatnot. Anyways, a lot of backstory there. But Dick Gregory, in the middle of our interview, I said something about the N-word. And he said, no, man, it went to the damn N-word. N-word. When was there ever a meeting that we were ever together and we decided that we would change that shit and make it the N-word? Basically, he was telling me the word is nigger. It has always been nigger. And you should know because Dick Gregory's book, autobiography, was called Nigger. Dick Gregory is one of the people who said, what do you call a black man who gets a PhD? Dr. Nigger, right? So he was reclaiming it not because he thinks it's a good thing to say, but because, like Mark Twain, he believes that there's more power in the real word than the fake word. Mark Twain said the difference between a word and the right word is the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. And I actually believe that to be true as a person who writes and as a person who writes for power. We do ourselves a disservice by erasing the words, erasing the concepts, and then making our people ignorant. And then all of a sudden the word becomes something different than it used to be, meaning you have the wrong people using it, for instance. So today I want to talk about a few things that are my burning questions about the word. You're a great person, El-Mekki, to talk to about this because they're tactical questions. They're not super profound, but they're just a few tactical ones that I think everybody watching might disagree with or could disagree with each other on here or there. So first thing I want to do is, can I just play a short video for you? Like I like to do.
I'm holding on to my chair, but yeah,
this was just short. This was not a big deal. I had so many different ones I wanted to show you because there are a lot of nigger videos out there of different sorts in terms of, like, if you want to do an entire college class, just a nigger show, a nigger course, there is so much material, source material out there that you could argue about this for a long time. But I'm gonna, wrong one. I'm gonna play this video real quick for you, and then ask you like what you think about it, because this puts it into an educational context. And I have to say to people watching, this one was not rare. This one is, when it comes to the use of the word nigger in an educational context or classroom or whatever, I found lots of these. Would be good if I could find it right now. There we go. Here we go. So I'm going to take us down for a second there, El-Mekki. Here we go.
No.
That thing that raises this shit. How you so little minded you can't understand that nigga is racist for white man to say for black man? It's fucking racist. Ian, when you say nigga, you never say nigga. No. Corporal, never say nigga. Would you say nigga? Would your white people say nigga? Fuck no, they wouldn't say nigga. How dare you? Well, you know what a commoditized word means? Explain it to me.
That's a word that's used so many times that it doesn't mean its original.
It's used by black people.
It's used by everyone.
No, you use it. Don't say everyone.
The word has become commoditized so that anyone can use it, and it's not a negative connotation.
It's a negative ass connotation. It's a negative ass connotation. For you to say it to me is negative.
Okay, when you hear it in a bunch of songs, are those people being negative when they use it?
By black men. By just black men. By black men. By
what does the word mean when they use it?
My friend, by black men. White men don't say that shit. Eminem, who's a fucking rapper, he will never say nigga the fucking song. So,
and he said if you say a word, it means friend. And if I say a word, the same word, it means something different.
Yes,
that's not true.
Just the fuck.
It's not true. It's not. Not if you want the world to move on. If you want this world to be the way it was 50 years ago, then you're true.
The more you move on, because white people aren't saying nigga. If a white man says nigga, it's just not moving on. You say nigga, it's slavery. Nigger, I'm a fucking nigger. I'm a fucking nigger. You call me a slave. That makes no fucking sense.
Nobody uses that word.
Yes, they do.
Nobody says nigger.
You just fucking said it.
You acting like
we're
having a conversation. You can say the word, but I can't.
You can't say nigger or fucking nigger.
Calling somebody.
The only reason I'm not fucking race because my fucking teacher. Don't say that shit.
I'm not calling you anything.
I don't give a fuck.
No one's calling
you. Said it. You said it. You said it.
Dude. If we're in a class and I'm teaching you, hey, the word nigger is an old. Dude, please, it's a word, bro. You cannot go through life and act like a word.
I'm fucking saying that shit.
Can affect.
Stop saying nigger and nigger. Point blank fucking period.
You keep saying it.
I can say it.
I said it one time.
You missed the conversation.
We
had a whole assembly. We were assembly after school.
And
we had assembly after school.
25 times.
I can say it. I'm black. I can say it.
Bruh.
Man, jeez. That's intense.
Can I give you just a quick context on that clip there?
Yeah, please.
It's nothing about the background. I want you to help me unpack everything that is happening in that moment. After 400 years, there is a black youth who is in a classroom with a mixed set of people with a white teacher, and they are arguing about this eternal word, this long-term word that still evokes passion and emotion and confusion and obviously ignorance, on the part of a teacher. We're talking about an educator, right? Who is supposed to be the person who teaches. That's what a teacher means, right? But if you're ignorant as hell, right? If you're ignorant as hell yourself and you're teaching. But anyways, just let me add this quick context because I'm petty. So I'm going to be petty Roosevelt just for like 10 seconds. So this was at Benjamin Franklin High School in New Orleans. Benjamin Franklin High School is the high school I didn't get into because if you're black, you have to test in. Well, no, I'm not going to be that petty. Everybody has to test in. But the way that they always kept it to be an integrated school for the white people of New Orleans who wanted to go to school with a handful of Negroes was they had a test to get in, a test of which I passed and didn't get in. And no, I'm not scarred by it at all or anything like that. I'm not trying to be petty. Benjamin Franklin also, after Katrina or whatnot, became the first school in New Orleans to unionize with all of its white teachers and become the example. Randy Weingarten has come to this school and said, now this is an example of a charter school that can work and a school that can work in New Orleans because it's got a legacy and it's longstanding and its teachers are white and unionized. And this teacher that you just saw, this is integration in New Orleans. This is the old school of New Orleans. This is the school that was the primary best that New Orleans could do before Katrina, whatnot. And you and I are watching a video of a white teacher in that school with a mixed classroom. This hits on so many of my buttons about what our schools used to be and traditional schools and unionized schools. And our teachers just want the best for everybody and integration. Hits all my buttons at once. Anyways, petty breakover, and we can go back to the content of it. What do you see as an educator when you're looking at this? What's missing from the context of the word nigger? What are they disagreeing about that you disagree about with the word nigger? And its power, its history, its meaning, all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so many layers to this. We can look at it from a pedagogical standpoint that there's a discussion between two people within the classroom. Other folks are engaged or passively engaged, but like, what's the real objective there, right? Like, so that's one part of it. Like, what's the objective of the teacher? When I first became a teacher, they used to say a teacher in their when their feet is worth two in their seats, and so like we were taught to, engage students and be around and be, just be present, thirdly, and most problematic is this teacher is clearly inciting this student even further, right? And so while the student is saying like he has, and understandably, deep problems, with a white person using the word, he continuously to uses it. And, and disregards the Black experience, the context that the student is trying to bring, his world experiences and perspective. He's totally disregarding that. not engaging, not trying to understand. It's literally like, you don't know what you're talking about, despite you being Black, despite this, the history of this word on your people and your community in Louisiana, in the Deep South. Like, I'm totally disregarding that. I'm here, I'm the teacher. I know your history better than you. I know the impact of this word better than you. I know the etymology and the transformation, or whatever we want to say about this word. I know it better than you, right? And like that, we can put this in isolation, but you can't put it in isolation. This is like a pervasive mindset, across this country, that people want to disregard, Black children's experiences and tell them this is how you should think about whatever it is, whether it's, history, whether it's about this literature, whether it's about current events, or about this word, so it's, it's just ongoing. I mean, I lost you.
The teacher's trying to give him like a lesson, it seems like, in this moment, about the context of the word. And the context, what he is saying to the student, this is a lesson that he's giving the student at the moment, I think, that I'm taking away. No one says nigger anymore. Nigga and nigger are two different words with two different levels of acceptability for use and rules for who and how they can be used. Okay. So I just want to start there for you as a lesson. Do you, as an educator, do you buy the idea that nigger with N-I-G-G-E-R and nigga, N-I-G-G-A, are two different words with two different levels of use rules, like rules of how they can be used and who can use them? Do you buy that part?
I mean, me personally, no. But there was one time that, I would use nigga with the A,
the show's over, bro. Sharif,
listen,
for real? Bro,
in high
over,
school,
man. Let's stop.
But it was in high school. Like, it was interesting. Like, I never used the word till I got to high school. And it was just so pervasive. Some people use it as a term of endearment. Some people use it as a term of derision, depending on the context of the language, depending on who you're talking to. Like, man, I'll bust you up, or, that's my, right? Like, and so it was used in both ways, in both contexts. So here I am, I'm coming in as this 14-year-old who never used the word, right? Like, never, ever, ever. And then I'm in this context where everybody's using it. And I don't think I adapted it into my language initially. I mean, my sophomore year, but I would say by the time I was a senior, it would roll off, my lips pretty easily, in different times. I don't think I would use it like, all the time, but it wasn't cringeworthy to me at that point, to hear my peers and things like that, using it. I gotta tell you the exact moment when I stopped. I was I was recovering from being shot. So I was 20, 21, 22. And my father calls me. He was still, in prison at this time. And, my grandmother, he calls him the three-way or whatever my grandmother has. And he asked me where my brother is. And I was like, Abel, I don't know where that Nick, and I just stopped. And he just got silent. Yeah, I caught myself, but not quick enough. And I just heard this as soon as I was like, oh my gosh, what the hell are you doing? And, as soon as, it was just a moment of silence at first, which seemed like forever, but it was only a second or two. And he said, you know how I feel about that word, son. And I was like, yes, I do. And I don't even know. Please forgive me. And I've since then, I was 21. Like, it was just like, really, it just was a game changer, because I knew the expectations in my household and with my family and things like that. But yeah, so it was very short-lived in my vernacular.
You're saying that nigga, N-I-G-G-A, was short-lived. Yeah, and like, I just saw Toyo put in a thing, like, examples of like my nigga and nigga please and whatnot. It is interesting that within my extended Black family, right, there are different levels, like there are households where this is a no-go completely, right? Like if I look at the class differences in some of the households I traveled as a kid for family members, it was a no-go in some houses. In other houses, it was a medium use, meaning like, it's not something you walked around all day long talking about or saying, but, if it popped up every now and then, nobody like freaked out. And then in other situations, it was like bacon. It was like something you put with every meal. It was like salty, spicy, bad for you, carcinogenic, and you just loved it, right? So I can remember being a child, and I tell this story, and if my dad is watching, he's going to get mad, but that's okay, because you deserve it. Yeah, I can remember the first time I brought a Prince album home. He freaked out. Like he wouldn't let me listen to Prince, and it was almost like it was porn or something like that. And he said all kinds of crazy shit about Prince at that moment. But the funny thing to me now, looking back on it, and I've made this observation before, was that I had free reign to go and listen to the Red Fox albums that we had, the Richard Pryor albums that we had, multiple others like Dolomite or whatever. And Nigger and Nigga was all over every one of those. The humor, the comedy or whatnot was all over that. So there's a problem with Prince, but there was no problem with Richard Pryor, Red Fox, and all those. Which brings me back to my question.
Thing, right? Yeah,
definitely generational, because if you went back and you watched a certain era of movies or whatnot, nigga would be like bacon. It'd just be like on every meal throughout the whole movie, and black and white people saying it. So going back to the question again, because I want to get tactical about some of these things.
I mean, before you do, I just want to, you brought up a really great point, because I had no idea. You showed me the clip, this was a year or so ago, where they actually used the word on national TV. Like it was just, was it Flip Wilson or something?
This was this Sanford and Son. So this is Red Fox on Sanford and Son, and I played it.
And I was shocked. I was like, no way, that did not happen. Impossible. No way in the world. And I was just like, holy cow! Like,
well, I mean, and this is a good point, because I saw that, and someone else my age saw that, and we lived that together. So if you're my age or whatnot, you can remember a time where it was acceptable to even say it on TV. Sanford and Son was a Norman Lear show, in league with Good Times and the Jeffersons and Archie Bunker and some of the others. And even on Archie Bunker, there were some things that were said that could not be said today, like you would not be able to say on TV today. But on Sanford and Son, there's a courtroom scene in it that I remember, and if people push me on it, I can get the link for you and show it to you. Basically, he's in the court. He's talking about police brutality, of all things. And he's saying, y'all talk about equality of law, and the courtroom was full of black people waiting for their cases to come up with cops. And he's like, how come y'all cops ain't got no white people in here? Blah, blah, something like that. And then he says, there's enough niggas in here to make a Tarzan movie, right? Mm-hmm. This is on mainstream TV, prime time, middle of the week. Can't remember what night it used to be on, but it wasn't seen as like anything. I can remember the first time the word bitch was said on TV. It was said on Dynasty, and that was considered a big deal. That was considered like, oh my God, I can't believe that Joan Collins said bitch on TV. But saying nigger on TV was still acceptable at the time. Anyways, going back to the question. Tactical question. The teacher is telling the student there is a difference between these two words. And I can say nigga, I can't say nigger though. And the reason I can say nigga is that it is a general use word now. It is in media, it's in songs, it's in hip hop. We sing these songs together. Do you buy that for that teacher and that student? Or are you buying the context that the teacher is selling the student of the word Nigga at that moment?
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind, and it's not the first time I've heard that argument for a white person, but it vacillates between fascinating and disgusting of how important it is for white folks to be able to say either of them words, even though there was a nigga with an A. Like, it's just like, why are you so like just intensely focused on being able to say it? Is it because you listen to hip hop songs and culture and pop culture, and you're just like, oh, I gotta be a part of it, no matter what their age is? They're just like, oh, I gotta, they want to disregard every other artistic expression of children, of youth, of hip hop generation. Yet that word is what they are like, oh, like, please, like this, it's like, I don't know, like I don't know what it is. It's just I need a psychiatrist to really help break that down. But they are fascinated with being able to use the word. Like that's part of their. We're talking about like 10-point platforms. for a lot of white folks, liberal and otherwise, using nigga is on their 10-point platform. Like they want to be able to use it. They want to defend the use. And they're like, listen, it's so pervasive that why not? And it just shows like, you know what, like some stuff's just not for you. Just fall back, shut up, and don't fix your lips to say certain things. Like, it's just a gross misunderstanding of white supremacy, of white people who are trying to define things as they see it from their perspective, instead of listening and acting with a sense of cultural humility and knowing that, you know what, I need to stay in my place. I'm always trying to get everybody else to stay in their perceived places. Nah, you actually have a place in this conversation, and it ain't in the front. It ain't even in the back. Get out the room. So
wow. So you say no, you don't really see that. So the context that he's teaching a lesson in this. You're not buying the context, because he does say at one point in this clip, what does he say? He says, if you want this to keep being a problem in history, then you can keep
making it a big deal.
Yeah, you could keep making it a big deal. So he's telling the kid, like, you're making it a problem by and the kid is okay. So let's step just beyond for a second. Then I want to leave this one classroom, because I don't want to put too much just on this one interaction, because what I want to say to people watching this, if you go and look through Google and YouTube for white teachers using the word nigger in the classroom and either getting fired or not for it, you will find them. You'll find lots of these examples. And because I've been watching these over a longer period of time, it's part of something that becomes a cause for me to think what I do that people don't understand. Chris, why are you always talking about white teachers? Chris, why are you always talking about these schools as if they're like racist? Why are you talking about these schools like we can't trust them with our kids and whatnot? Aren't you overselling it too much or whatnot? The number of these stories is crazy. The number of the teachers who have this as a problem, a lack of understanding, is crazy. Not every white teacher is in the urban center too, where they're all woke and trying to be woke either, just so you know, wherever you live. There's a hell of a lot of people that live in first wing, second wing, third ring, fifth ring, suburbs, exurbs, rural areas, towns or whatnot, that we have our kids in their classrooms too. And as a matter of fact, 50% are in those classrooms now too. So the idea that that some of y'all are somewhat safe with the number of woke white teachers you think you have that at least know not to do this stuff. Well, first of all, let's just start with, this is a young white dude as a teacher in the middle of New Orleans. So
age doesn't listen. I told you the story before where this, he didn't say the word nigga, but like it was everything else, but it was all the words that would surround it. We were at the charter renewal thing, and one of the 8th graders, he was like, he was dancing, because they were, our students were chanting, and he was dancing. Older, it wasn't a younger white teacher. This was an older white teacher, a veteran teacher, and came up to him and was like, oh, he said something. He was like, that's what they teach you to do in school, like to dance like that. You know what I mean? And the kid was just doing a normal, he was just like jiving, to the beat. And it was like when I stepped to him, he was incredulous that somebody would even say something to him about it. And I'm just like,
wow.
Like you're the vile, your whole countenance, everything is showing like your contempt for this child, this black child, right? And so the word is one thing. The mindset is much bigger, because some people can bite their tongue and not say it or just say it internally, right? But the way that my mom used to describe why she stopped going in teacher lounges. And she said, because how they would talk about children, and these were all in all black schools, right? Even if you remove the word, the vitriol remains. The mindset that is comfortable with saying the words in some settings, how they talked about other people's children, how they talked about the community that they were visiting under duress. They were being paid to visit, not paid to teach. They were being paid to visit and manage. Right. And so that mindset is way more pervasive than the amount of people who, slip or deliberately use the word.
Wow. So in that moment, that people think that they're slipping or using the word and it's coming out of them, they're actually betraying something that they know it's wrong, because it's kind of hidden in them or suppressed, but in a moment it comes out, and they have more of a problem with the fact that you call it out when it comes out at the moment than the fact that it was in there in the first place. Right. This teacher here is a good example of it coming out of her. Teachers is what has me thinking of it. I have it up. This was another one of those videos. This is in Baltimore. A teacher who's yelling to the kids. She gets frustrated. She can't manage the class. She can't manage them. They are not being they're not being citadels of a citadel of discipline. And she gets angry and she yells at them. Do you want to be punk ass niggers your whole life who are going to get shot? Right. In that moment, she feels like she slipped. That's going to be her defense after this happens was, I kind of slipped. I didn't mean to say that or whatnot. It's kind of like, but that was in you though. Right.
Yeah, you're drawn from a well, right? Like so even if you slip, it came from something, right?
Yeah. It didn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah. You had 1,000 thought bubbles before one of them burst.
So when she was walking in to class every day, she's saying this, and those are like text bubbles, but then the thought bubble behind all of it. Wow. That's a trip to think about. What's the thought bubble? Michelle Johnson's been pretty active today. I wonder what Michelle Johnson would think around the teachers. What's in the teacher's thought bubble? The one we can't see, the things we can't see.
And check out what she also said. Like one of her kids' friends said, "Hey," and you see this a lot. Like, do I have permission? Because I'm down with you. I hang out with you. We're friends. So are we friendly enough where I can use that without you being offended? Right? Like that's also one. And she's describing this as her child. But you hear adults, also being in that kind of space. Like if we're proximal enough, then I can use this language and you shouldn't be offended, especially if you're using it a whole lot anyway, right? We're listening to the same songs, you're talking about, you may use it, a lot in your language and I'm right here and just like, yo, I'm down with you. Like, can I help me in, tap me in?
What a weird position to be put into. What a weird position for someone to put you into and ask you. I mean, on one hand, you want to be like agreeable in some ways. Like, yeah, I mean, I guess we are cool. I mean, blah, blah, blah. And on the other hand, you want to be like, can I punch you in your throat?
But it's interesting, and of course, this has been an ongoing dialogue. So when I was a teacher, I would have these dialogue. As a principal, I got in less dialogue. Like, listen, don't use that language in the building, period. Like, I don't want to hear. If I see you on Sunday in the supermarket, don't use that language. Like, I don't want to hear it. Right. And listen, the students were respectful with the wishes, right? Like, and understanding like, hey, you know what, again, generationally or whatever, the same deference I gave to my father, I kind of felt that same way as I got older, but, we would have this conversation with students and when I was a teacher, and some of them would say that if it was their friend or if they used it, they wouldn't mind. Others said, like, we call them niggas, right? Like, that's how removed they were from like it actually being a term of,
derision.
Like, right? Yeah, derision. They're like, we call white people niggas. Like, it was telling like, oh yeah, the one guy was talking about his job. He's like, nigga, I would, he was saying like playfully, but like, oh yeah, I'll smack you. But he was talking to his wife. He was the only black kid there. He was talking to the white people, who's co-workers.
Which, that becomes complicated for white people too, to understand the use, the licensing of the word nigger. Oh, that's what I'll call it. The licensing of the word nigger and the prohibitions on the word nigger is, I can remember an Oprah episode years ago when Oprah went to this little racist town because there had been some really nasty racial incident, and she brought the Oprah show there to kind of understand white people better there. And one of them, being very progressive and wanting to, who lived in the town, was just like, she stood up and she's like, Oprah, I just want to tell you, something like, I don't know exactly what she said. I don't want to make it up, but it was something like, heartfelt. And she wanted to say something heartfelt. And she said, and we're all niggers, not just Oprah.
Not just Oprah.
Not just Oprah. And Oprah was like, well, listen, for the record, I'm not a nigger. But in her way, she was trying to universalize the word nigger so that it wouldn't mean white supremacy, the inferiority of a black being, the black being the black, the noir being attached to a permanent state of inferiority to the level of which you could dehumanize them and get away with it because they were a non-entity, they were a non-person. That's what nigger means. So the niggerization of people is actually the transferring them of being a human being to being a concept that which they can accept any level of abuse. That is niggerization. Like, you transform a person, you actually, God creates them as a human and as a being that should have every human right in the world. Then man, and mostly white man, takes that human being that God delivered to the world and actually transfers them into an aftermarket after being, another being, a post-sapien, a kind of being that now it is justifiable to do anything to them, to rape them, beat them, murder them, cut them, hang them, remove their limbs, cut the limbs off of their children, suffocate their children in rivers, and systematically do it, create mass graves and fill those mass graves with these people, all while holding a Bible in your hand and some concept of being a moral person, because that person deserved it because they are a nigger. And that's what nigger means. And that's what nigga means. Nigga is the Splenda, or the equal, or the saccharin of nigger, right? Nigga is nigger light, right? And the fact is, nigga will kill you just like nigger will kill you too. They both will. So anybody walking around saying either one of them has to understand the root of what they're saying, the origin. Because if you talk about the leaf of the tree without talking about the root of the tree, you're an asshole. Because this got your ancestors killed. This got your ancestors like put into everything that happens after you niggerize a people. Everything after that happens downstream after that is the stuff that I call the leaves of the tree. We're talking about segregation and discrimination in the housing market, and discrimination in banking and in real estate and in law and in courts and in police departments and in schools. And all of them have their root in nigger, right? And niggerization, right? That is the concept. 2 days or so ago, I did a show with a couple of white educators about the 1619 Project. And one of the points that I'll make about it that is damning to me is, before the Mayflower, the book that was based on spends a little bit of time of telling you about the process that white America used to take free black people in America who owned land and were married and were richer than white people in some cases and had some things. This is before the racialization of slavery. This is before the unicization of slavery. This is when they made it they had a monetary need to transfer black people from being these citizens that they were into being niggers. Right. And that process is laid out in Before the Mayflower. It's not just a handful of black people got off a boat in 1619 and then slavery started and black people were enslaved, blah, blah, blah. That is too stupid of a story to tell even to us, because then you won't understand nigger. Right. There was a scientific process that people undertook to make the public okay with visiting upon the black body every possible horror. And that was a scientific process. It took a while because there was no concept of that yet, right? Slavery was old in the entire world. Anti-black slavery actually was a creation in a laboratory in the United States in a way that it wasn't in other places. It's not to say that it didn't exist slightly. Anyways, that's a long rant about why I think it's important to get back to the root of what we're saying when we have these arguments about nigger, nigga, niggerization. I saw a meme somewhere that said nigger, nigga, or neither, right? And you pick, right? Like, and I think we should pick. Anyways, I do have a question.
A great point. Just before you the question, like, people should really look up John Punch in that story. So if you can't dive into the full history, just look up. I think his first name was John, but Punch in Virginia, and what happened to him and to white indentured servants. What happened to John Punch and his family? But go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when you're talking about this transformation of, or using anti-blackness as the the way to make money. It became lucrative, and so John Punch was amongst a group of indentured servants. So that means he was supposed to be freed or whatever after a certain amount of servitude, and they ran away. Well, they were caught. And the judge decided there was going to be a difference, because you were black and you had the audacity to run away. You're going to get one punishment, which was enslavement for life. The other ones, they were punished. I mean, they were still tortured and punished, but it wasn't a life of servitude. It didn't impact the rest of their family in the way that it did John Punch's. And so that was just one part. And that wasn't the only thing. As Chris said, it's multiple ways that this all kind of came to fashion together. And part of it was in the Constitution, just where it's solidified, right, by the government, by the folks that are on the money, and then the heroes and the walls and on the plays or the musical, all this stuff, like these people said, like, these are not human beings, so that's where it all starts. Like, once they solidify that in the government contract between colonies to become states, to become a government, and form it on the basis of, we have these people in our population, but they're not really people. And you can use them for your benefit. You can use them to vote. You can use them for commerce. You can use them for power, but they are not to be considered human beings, So that's that. Cheap. Yeah. So I appreciate bringing up that whole idea of like how it was a systemic approach to create this, or the niggerization, or creating this, what they wanted to describe as subspecies, when in actuality, it was all monetary gain,
God, I feel like I get mad at myself even that I have to keep going back to 1619. But this is a thing that came up in that show. Before the Mayflower, friends, please go and read it again. The ones who have read it before, read it again. And if you haven't read it before, please read it so that we can have intelligent conversations about these. But it had hit me even in prepping for this last show that the first chapter of that book is one that I think people forget about all the time. The very first chapter of that book is the African origins, right? So it gets to that before it gets to how we were niggerized in America. And one of the things that you learn from reading that prehistory of America from the Black side of things, the African side of things, is just how many Greek and Roman and Egyptian and ancient texts that were Black positive, in that Blacks were prior to the niggerization of Black people in the United States and in Europe and colonization. The ancient text of the world, Blackness is a good thing. Blackness and Black people and Black intellect and Black origins and the things that what we delivered to the world. People were rating Black people as the superior people in a lot of ways when it came to math and architecture and art and many other things. There wasn't this concept yet that because you are Black, you are ugly, smelly, hostile, worthy of enslavement, worthy of all those things. That was an invention by jealous people who came along later and got a gun. So that was an armed robbery in history that was grand larceny that actually never has been solved. It's a cold case. And it's a cold case because we keep dumbing down people by starting history at the wrong point for them. If you start history with the slave that got off the boat in 1619 in the United States, I can understand why you hate Black people and don't think that they ever contributed anything to the world that's superior to what you contributed, right? I can understand how you don't see the superiority of the contribution of the Black person to the world and how you might be afraid of going back there and why you need a word like nigger to be a firewall between you and that Black past, right? Because that Black past holds some things that would take away all the air out of your superiority. Like it would be kind of be over. Anyways, should Black people use nigger or nigga? We can talk about whether or not white people should use it and be using it, but what about Black people? Should it be licensed to Black people to use either one of them, knowing where it comes from and its origin? And commenters, I want y'all to answer this too in the comments. I want to say who says what. Should Black people be using either nigger or nigga? Go El-Mekki. This is all on you. I ain't answer it, so there you go.
So listen, as I said in high school, between the ages of 15 and 21, 16 and 21. Yeah, I used it. I don't use it now. I guess it's multi layers. Like, one, I think in open company, absolutely not. In closed doors is still questionable. I think I would, and I understand how hard it is. Like, I've never heard my children use the term, but it doesn't mean that they're not using it, when I'm out of earshot. And so, what I will hope is that we can move beyond that and stop trying to, our most famous Black Panther Party cub, right? Like Tupac, he used to say, like, it stands for, I forget what he used to say, never ignorant, always, I don't remember what it was, but like, we have to stop doing all these acrobats to take a term. And I think I heard you say this before, Chris, that for so many of our ancestors, it was the last word they hear before they were lynched, before they were burnt, before they were shot, before they were buried, right? Like, and so for me, like, I just can't remove, the history and the toxicity and the murderous rage that term was coined and used, as you said, like to try to convince people that this was a subhuman species of being, instead of the, God created human being like all the other human beings on earth. And so for me, like, I can't separate that, and so, I think if you have a deeper understanding of that legacy, it's hard to say, oh, we're going to change this word or this letter and the pronounce. Like, why are we doing all? Like, why are we spending so much energy? Like, why do we have to use this term? Why are people so in love, like, with this term? And I do believe that people can evolve out of things. Like, for whatever reason, pop culture, this, that, people just have it. People have it in their systems, and it just flies out. I think it can be evolved beyond that, and definitely we need to be careful about it.
What about hip hop?
And well, that's what I'm talking about. Like, it's a whole lot of other rhyming words. Like, listen, these poets, these hip hop artists, they are brilliant. Most of them. The mumble rap, y'all ain't brilliant.
They are not brilliant.
But they're not brilliant. You might be good at making money, but that doesn't make you brilliant. 45 has made money. He ain't brilliant, right? Like, so that's one thing, right? But they have such creative ways to like, I just think that they don't have to. And if they made a decision to
that student in the clip that we showed at the beginning in the classroom makes that point at some point. He says Eminem, the most storied and sold rapper of all times, has done an entire career. Eminem is actually like the top of the heap in history. And he said he's done an entire history without using the word. And is largely seen as the smartest, most clever, most kind of insightful writer, like when it comes to actually writing bars and whatnot. And he has been able to do it without the word nigger or nigga. And I can remember years ago, Will Smith has in one of his rhymes, he's like, y'all think you're bad, blah, blah, blah. And he says, he's going off on kind of like the mainstream rappers, corporate rappers. And he basically says, I dare you to make an entire album or even an entire song without cussing or using the word nigga. Go, let's see. Right. And I always laughed about that. I thought that was a good challenge because Will Smith was like one of the only people that I could allow like my oldest son to listen to for a period of time.
Shout out to West Philly, Overbrook High graduate.
Born and raised. This is what I want to say about that too. Is that Gen X is starting to sound old in terms of like things that will come out of our mouths. But here comes my like old man thing. Is like, I was at the beginning of hip hop. I remember hip hop from day one, at least as day one as it could have been to get to New Orleans. Let's just put it that way. And there was a different vibe in hip hop in let's party, let's have a party, let's set this off tonight type of thing. And it went into, from the party, it went into let's have a little bit of message, like The Message and White Lines and things like that, where it became more about we're gonna do a little bit of CNN here. We're gonna tell you what we see on the streets and whatnot. At some point, that is all when the audience for hip hop was still black. was still almost entirely black. It was black music. It was called black music. You would go into some stores like Sam Goody and others, and there was a section called black music.
For real?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There was a section called black music. And you never saw any of the little metalhead white boys actually going in that section at all because they just didn't care. That was just like that weird thing that black people were doing.
Yeah.
When those same people cut their hair and started getting hip on hip hop, corporate took over, and corporate took over hip hop. And suddenly they started deciding who could make it and who could not. Because before them, the arbiter of what could work on the street or not was the consumer, the buyers, black people.
Mm-hmm.
Once corporate took over, Warner Brothers and everybody else, then all of a sudden you got more and more ignorant. Like the acts got more and more ignorant. They got a lot more ghetto. It became a lot less insightful, like Grandmaster Flash and others. You know, it became something totally different. So now today we have our kids. We have middle class white kids in the suburbs who are the biggest audience for the word nigger that there is. The biggest audience for the word nigger is white young people.
Yeah.
Right?
When I used to tell my students that, they're like, what? I was like, yeah, y'all buying tapes off 52nd Street. The ones who buying them actually on records and all of that. Like those are the white suburban kids, and they're the biggest consumer of hip hop, you know, as black as you think it is, you know. They were dumbfounded when I used to
it's
tell
not a black industry anymore. It's totally not. So you have people actually selling the world. You will have somebody in Saudi Arabia and somebody in Japan and somebody in Morocco saying the word nigger, and you won't know where it came from. And it will because and there's some countries that have stopped the sale of America media content to their countries because of pornography and things like hip hop and others, the glorification of terrible lifestyles, you know. Anyways, so where did you land on that? You do or don't think that black people should be saying it? You don't think that black people should be saying it?
I don't think we need it. I don't think we should. I just, you know, and
should we be buying our kids this hip hop? Should we let our kids listen to hip hop?
Listen, it is hard to, you know, to tell a kid. I think this goes back to parenting, right? And how you do it. Many of the times, if a parent, we just say, don't do this, don't do that. What does that cause it? It just causes them to be more sneaky about it, right? And so,
I mean, my dad told me don't listen to Prince. I bought every Prince album that came out.
Yeah, so it's rare where I tell a parent, oh, just do. You know, I think what I tell parents, or what I try to remind myself, is to try to have as many conversations as possible. Because often it could be like a short phase, like, you know, that I went through 15 through 21, right? Like it could be something where even if someone's listening to it, they're an informed consumer, that they're thinking about it and they're having this cognitive dissonance as they're listening to it and say, like, I'm not really down with that, right? And it's an evolution. But I think when you try to just, you know, be authoritarian about things, the human reaction is often, when I get over my fear, then I'm just going to either, one, be more secretive about it, or two, I'm going to just rebel against that. And then they're not really hearing the message. And so what I would do is really, I would say, you know, like, hey, you can't play that in this house, instead of don't you ever buy it, right? Like, I think drawing boundaries for me as a parent was important. And it was important for me as a child, you know. But I think if we have the conversation, then people can really see, like, you know, truth and falsehood, you know, ignorance and scholarship. Like, you know, that stuff is as clear as day when you're informed and you're engaged in conversation. And we don't want to mix our children up with them being walled off just because of rebelliousness or reaction to us being super heavy handed. But yeah, boundaries are absolutely important. None of that crap in this house, yo. So.
You know, it's interesting for me because I grew up on it, and I'm raising my kids different than what I was raised with. And my raising was fine. Like, the way that I was raised was fine. My seventh ward existence, the times where I lived in California, I lived elsewhere. My family and extended family were just straight up regular working class American Black people. I grew up with Richard Pryor all around me. It was like the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life, and it still is. Grew up, like I said earlier, with Red Fox and Flip Wilson, and Jim Kelly was one of my favorite, you know, the Black exploitation movies of the 70s. Me and my dad watched all of those together. Ooh. Yeah. Oh, you remember Jim Kelly, like, right? Stuff. Jim Kelly was amazing. And those movies, like, where it would be Jim Kelly or, you know, Fred Williamson or Jim Brown and others or whatnot. All of those were part of the backdrop of my growing up, and I grew up fine, and I grew up around people that had Black consciousness, even as that was the backdrop. There is a part in time where Richard Pryor does a bit where Richard Pryor says, he tells a story about going to Africa and what happened to them there. It's a really funny story. There's lots of stuff in that, but the punchline at the end of it is, I discovered while I was in Africa the moment that I would never say nigger again. And that was a big deal because his entire comedy was based a lot on that. On that before that. And he basically came back from Africa and said, you know, I had the moment where I really knew for sure I will never say that word again, and became true. His comedy became different. People looked at him differently after he did, though. They didn't actually, like, you know, that was the beginning of some of the slide at Richard Pryor, is when he didn't do that old. And then here came Eddie Murphy with picking it up again, right? So anyways, and I'm not raising my kids that way. Like I'm raising my kids totally different. Like I have no tolerance with my own children of that, because they're an evolution of me. They're not supposed to be a reproduction of me. They're not supposed to reproduce my history. They're supposed to evolve from my history and from what we knew. It's still hard because they will hear it in different places. It will come up on TikTok. It won't get censored in places where it's supposed to be, but they know that it's wrong and they know that it's not acceptable. My kids are biracial. Also, they're in biracial situations, integrated situations, one of which where the white boys around them can't get enough of saying the word on a regular basis. And we had a little issue and situation with some of the parents of some of those kids, and the parents of those kids didn't give a shit. They didn't give a damn. They're white parents. They didn't give a damn that their little white boys were walking around using that word. One of them gave my son a banana at his birthday party and thought it was funny. And I found out later they'd been calling him a monkey, and we had some issues. We had some problems. So like the niggerization of Black people that started in 1619, actually the 50 years after 1619, all the way up until today, where we have TikTok, Fortnite playing, kids drinking juice boxes, still, like, that is a signal that started years ago that keeps actually transmitting. It was the cell tower of all cell towers. It keeps transmitting throughout history and throughout time, to where today you have a kid playing Fortnite, and some of that shit is coming out in the headset of your kid who's playing Fortnite, for instance, right? And you're hearing it. So I had two more questions, one of which I think is easy to get through quickly. The second one I think is really the more important one to me for this conversation that we're having today and people watching. But the first one is, should we say the N-word? Do we do like taking Dick Gregory's rule for me is like, don't say that. Don't participate in the N-word shit. No one calls the Holocaust the H word, is what he said to me. He was like, you think Jews ever sat around and said, let's call the Holocaust the H word so we can take some of the sting out of it? He's like, no, they know that this should be a never forget situation. This should be a never get unclear about this ever again. This is what happened. So we don't call it the H word. We call it the Holocaust. You think, how do you feel about that with nigger?
I mean, I totally hear where he's coming from. Actually, that's what I wrote in my notes, that, you know, when you think of the Holocaust, that was the example that I thought of. And anyone who's going through oppression, they're going to try not to do that. I hear the other side where they're like, oh, we want to take the power away. But if you study etymology, you study, you go back to, the root of the word and the reasoning for the word. I think it's hard to just say, let's use it to take the sting away, because right now it has evolved into such a different space where so many of it, just if I use it, right, and the youth use it down the street, they're not hearing the difference or the gravity or the, why I'm using it, or the power that's, that was wrested from human beings in order to use it freely. Like that's, I don't know if that's the first part of the lesson. I think it just ends up being part of the entire, use of the word, the continuum of the use of the word. And I don't know if it's, but if a kid would say like, well, why are you using the N word? They're not going to ask me, why are you saying the word? But if I say, yeah, I don't use that word, then that starts the debate and conversation with folks who do use it. So, I totally can understand why Dick Gregory, approach it that way, but he's also talking about using it in this in a scholarly way, in a historic way, to understanding the impact. right now people are saying it as if you would say a day of the week, so
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, nigger, Thursday,
yeah, exactly.
Friday.
So I don't know if that evokes that
That's
conversation, pushes that conversation, by not doing it. So,
yeah. All right. Well, the last question, and this will make us go over a little bit. So you got just a minute to go over, just a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So I want to talk about quickly all the ways in which people call you a nigger that they don't actually call you nigger. Because I think actually, I thought I saw Belinda Smith somewhere in here say, I think we're putting too much power just on the word nigger, which is true, because my problem with even the reason we're having this show is not because it's a word, it's a concept. And that it's the concept it's a mindset, and it's a concept that will kill you. Mm-hmm. It's actually like you can't see the bars and the chains and the ropes of the word nigger, but they're all around you and you don't know it. So I had a couple of examples where I think white society especially is calling you a nigger without actually saying the word. I think welfare, looting, thugs, super predator are all examples of being able to say nigger without saying nigger. We know what those things mean. But in education, I just want to throw, because I'm petty, I just want to throw another one on the heap, because what a lot of white progressives are going to be saying as they listen to a lot of this is, yeah, boy, it's terrible that those right-wing people, do that. They do say stuff about welfare and blah, blah. So white progressives watching this, especially those of you who like to read Miss Diane Ravitch and others, and come at us. When you come at me talking about all of my lived experience and the things that I say and that I do are the result of a laboratory created by white billionaires, you are calling me a nigger. When you pull my 990s and tell the whole world this nigga is getting paid too much and his salary is way too high and he's an uppity nigga and therefore don't listen to him, you are calling me a nigger. When you were saying that the black parents who show up to fight for charter schools are too stupid to know what they're talking about and all they are doing is parroting what white people told them to say, you are calling them niggers and nigresses, right? So white progressives, don't get it twisted. You are calling people niggers every day too. What say you, Sharif El-Mekki, former principal of a charter school?
Listen, that first clip, that was likely, don't know for sure, but likely a white liberal, a progressive, because I've heard his very similar language. Like the conservative, they don't care. They're like, well, we ain't defending the use. We're gonna fly our flag and we're gonna call you what we're gonna call you. It's the other folks who want to use the word or just have it in their thought bubble and not slip, right? But it comes out in their policies, it comes out in their practices, it comes out in their politics. Listen, the word nigga is nothing but a coined anti-blackness phrase. And we can't think that anti-blackness only sits in language. Anti-blackness, in essence, is in policy, it's in practice, it's in mindset. And that's pervasive throughout this country, particularly the folks who say, who want to be proximal to us and say, we're your saviors. We know what's best for you. We're the ones that will show you the way. We are your white guiding light. That's a further attempt to, to the niggerization process, as you, described it earlier. It's the same stuff. And so, when we're talking about, staying, I know you guys don't use this phrase anymore, but staying woke, being awake, that's what I know you don't like. I wanted to see you like cringe, like, banish that word. But listen, when Malcolm says, like, first you have to awaken the people, don't try to organize them around things while they're still asleep. Awaken them, and then you'll get action, right? If there's people just sad and wringing their hands and saying, oh, they're trying to take our schools, oh, they won't let our all black schools, or in Philly, like the black founded charters, the black led charters are the ones that are getting shut down fastest, quickest, right? He's not a hero of mine, but Ben Franklin, when he drew that snake and chopped it up when he was trying to message the colonies, that's the same message for any group: unite or die, right? Like that's it. And so as we're uniting, we need to be very clear that anti-blackness ain't just folks that are, in a particular demographic or in a particular geographical location or a particular political party. Like anti-blackness is a pervasive drink, or smog, as you and Dr. Seaton talked about from Dr. Tatum. Everybody. And you know what? Some of the most lucrative ways for anti-blackness is self-hatred. That's the most lucrative for white supremacy. So we just got to be super conscious and clear that, listen, just because they show up don't mean that they're showing up. Some of them are standing by right in our own houses, right in our own communities. That stand by. A lot of people think like, oh yeah, they standing by way for it. Nah, they standing by right in your downtown, your city hall, your political party. Yeah, they standing by there too. Don't think that message was just for one group of people. If you asleep. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I love your idea about the thought bubbles, because you can't see people's thought bubbles, but it is informing the things that they're doing and they're saying in the moment. And a lot of times what they're doing and saying is a shield for what they really believe.
Bruh.
They're lying.
Yeah. So we've known this all along, but if you look at TNTP's report, and this is something, and again, it wasn't like, this new science, but they went deep and showed, right? Like, how Black children, brown children get, it's the opportunity myth. They did this research around, what teachers are giving kids. So they're giving 9th grade Black kids 5th grade work. That's calling them a nigga. That's saying like, you can't teach it. If I'm teaching, and this is why, Dr. Seaton and our team talk about like mindset as you're teaching so much, right? If a Black child answers a question, first of all, I may not even ask you the challenging question, because I'm like, my thought bubble is, you don't know this anyway. Right. Or if I ask you and you give a wrong answer, I'm like, see, because I already came in with this, racist mindset, this, you're just a nigger anyway. Right. Like, then if you get a wrong answer, I'm not going to challenge you. Right. I'm not going to say like, hey, all right, call on somebody else. Now, hey, what did you hear? What do you think about that answer? I'm not going through those processes to check for understanding and challenge my student. I'm just like, no, wrong answer. I'm moving on, because you didn't know it anyway. Right. And so this whole idea, you're just that thought bubble thing, that mindset thing, that's the crux of the issue. Because when we talk about lesson plans being political documents, and every time you teach is a political statement, whether you teach well, it's a political statement, or whether you teach poorly, it's a political statement. It betrays your mindset. It informs people. And so that is pervasive. And so we just have to acknowledge that. And that's why this mindset, not just who's teaching our kids in the classroom, who prepared those teachers to be in front of my kids? Right? And are they worthy to be in front of my kids? And who prepared them? What's their intellectual pedigree? What's their intellectual genealogy?
Whole different show. It could be an entirely different show, but I mean, the bottom line is like, who decolonized those teachers before they prepared them, even? Because if you ask me who prepared them, 400 years of history prepared them, 400 years of media and the consumption of stories and narratives and plays and books and common myths. That's what prepared them, right? Like, you only had 4 years with them. You had 4 years with them in classrooms that didn't matter, right? In college, higher ed, expensive higher ed classrooms with a bunch of theory that didn't matter. Actually, before they got to you, they had at least, 18 years of the world preparing them. And the world has a lot of messages that they put into them. They were steeped like tea bags in some bullshit. And here you are for 4 years trying to prepare them to get the bullshit out of the person so that they can get in the classroom and be useful for the kids.
Listen, a lot of those professors, they tea bag steeping right along with it. Right? Once they get into the class, they're like, oh, you believe that about them? I'll believe that too. Let's dive in. You know what I mean?
Let's do this. Well, listen, I appreciate this just in some ways. I don't know if it was important as it is to other people. I think it's important to stop and have conversations about the things that people can't talk about. And I think one of those things that we can't talk about is the level to which the concept of the nigger and the niggerization of the Black people of the United States is actually something that we're arguing about at its externalities. We're arguing about the leaves of it and not getting down to the root and to the basis of it. And we have people that are reading books and sharing information and text and even things like my favorite thing to pick on, things like popular culture and popular science and popular history, like 1619, are actually not erasing the original sin of those things. Actually, people understanding the few people that got off the boat in 1619 actually is nowhere near the revolutionary change of of intellect and mind that's needed to understand the number one, what came before that, and number two, the process that it took. The 1776 project will tell you this. The number of those original people who died millionaires is crazy, right? So that wasn't chattel slavery yet. That was not the racialized slavery yet. The scientific invention of anti-Blackness in the way that America perfected it actually had not taken place yet. And it's the process that I don't think that people understand. That Negerization process that took place over the 50 to 60 years after those people set foot in the United States is actually the innovation of America. It's the thing that America innovated when it comes to racism, right? And when you see Donald Trump today, Donald Trump has perfected the Negerization process, right? And the best way to tell that is to look at the people of color around him supporting him the most. Actually, they are the most Negerized group of people ever, because they actually have been completely lobotomized. They have had a complete kind of cultural lobotomy. And now they are like Manchurian Negroes who say exactly what they're supposed to say for the master in exactly the way they're supposed to say it. And you can't think of a better product to produce if you're a white supremacist than that. I'm going to let that go and end there, because I probably just said a whole bunch of things that are going to piss people off, and I'm about to get some email and other things like that. Brother El-Mekki, do you want to like clean that up at all and or fix that in the end?
No, I don't think it needs fixing. You know, like those people, while they're highlighted and pushed in front of us, you know, Malcolm said they're always going to be pushed in front of us. As soon as you demand freedom and justice, white folks are going to push Black people in front of you and say, you don't need that. Why are you arguing about that?
Yeah.
You know? And so like, we know that this has been ongoing, and I think it's because of the social media that is just more in your face. But that whole idea of, you know, the field Negro and the house Negro comes alive every single day in all wakes of life, and politics for sure.
I think that's a great place to stop. I appreciate you so much, El-Mekki. Thank you for coming back again.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for this, you know, the platform. Thanks for inviting the audience and engaging this audience. And thanks for continuing to dive into conversations that need to be had.
Well, if you get any mail or negative feedback about this, don't send it to me. Send it to Toya. Send it to Toya. Toya's like our customer service department. She'll take care of it. She'll split it over. Or send it to Christina Laster, who I think can help us out on that, or Jasmine Lane, or Michelle Johnson and Dr. Johnson.
Them mamas, like that's what you need. You need those mamas. They give you know what Red Bear said: punch them in the gut and daze them with an uppercut. Right? Like that's what they giving out. That's what these mamas are giving out. You know, so.
Well, to say that to all y'all watching, we appreciate all of y'all for giving us an hour of your day on Fridays to talk about things that are pertinent to our liberation. This is Freedom Friday. We are still not free, but hopefully after an hour with us, we are freer than we were when we started. I appreciate all of you. We don't agree on everything, but we do agree on the fact that we should be treated human. We do agree on the fact that we were born with unsurpassable worth given to us by God, and that no one nowhere should invent anything that actually makes us a subspecies, a sub people or whatnot. I've actually brought out this word nigger for us to talk about today, not as a word, but as a concept. And it's a concept that is with us alive and well. As recent as the last presidential debate that just took place this week, we have seen niggerization of people on full display and what it means at the highest levels of power. So be serious about it. Take it seriously. If you're a teacher and you're an educator, don't reproduce this bullshit. Don't take this into your classrooms. And to El-Mekki's point, check your own thought bubbles. Whether you're black, white, Mexican, Puerto Rican, blue, green, blue, Irish, whatever you want to be, check your thought bubbles. Is there some of this bullshit in your thought bubbles? Because if there is, actually that is between you and your God, but fix it, work it out, because you're contributing to the damage of people. Appreciate you all. That's our happy message for